Strange Brew Podcast, Season 1, Episode 327.
But the biggest thing to remember is we're dead.
Feels that way, doesn't it? Really does. I'm glad we have that clip. I'm glad we saved that clip for moments like this. It's hard to fathom things going any worse for the Packers than they did from the second half on, and not even the whole second half, from the 10-minute mark of the third quarter on. You go from a 9-point lead on the road against the number one seed in the AFC with the ball and a chance to blow the game wide open. And on one play, it felt like everything began to unravel, and it culminates late third quarter with Micah Parsons, what appears to be a torn ACL. He's done for the year. The ripple effect of that, not just this year, but next year, the picks you gave up. You don't have a first-round pick now for a couple of years, and there's nothing you could do about that. And I think you make the trade 1,000 times out of 1,000, but this is the cataclysmic situation. When you make a trade like that, you give up the draft capital, you give the big contract. This is what you're hoping to avoid, and here we are in mid-December. Packers still fighting for their playoff lives, still fighting for their division lives, but without Parsons and Kraft and Jenkins and Devontae Wyatt and some of the injuries they sustained, it is hard to envision right now a deep playoff run, a Super Bowl-type run, which is the path it felt like that they could be on. Just a devastating day. That's how we led the sportscast this morning. Devastating day. Disaster in Denver. As the Packers drop 134-26, but more so than just the result, which was frustrating, all of the injuries. There is some hope with some of these guys coming out of yesterday. Christian Watson might not be as bad as we think. Zach Tom might not be as bad as we think. Evan Williams, who also left the game and did not return with a knee injury, he might not be as bad off as we think. So we'll get to all that. We'll break the game down. Injuries aside, a real rough day for Halfley in the defense. Bo Nix and Sean Payton ate their lunch yesterday in a 34-26 loss on the road in Denver. Packer 4-game winning streak is over. Denver runs their winning streak to 11 games. We did cash a playoff ticket on Denver. Anybody feel good for me? They did clinch a playoff spot. We had that future. So that's 2 of the 3 futures we have on Denver that have already cashed. We'll talk real briefly about the Bucs. After a great win against the 3-seed Celtics at home on Thursday, they go to Brooklyn last night, just like Washington a week or so ago. Brooklyn is actively tanking, not trying to win games, and the Bucs not only lose, they lost by 45 points to a 5-win team that is actively trying to lose games. Disgusting effort last night. And I don't know if it's going to happen, but you feel like Doc Rivers should almost be either transitioned to a front office role where they can hide him in an office somewhere for the rest of his contract, or maybe needs a meeting with the Bobs. That was a truly despicable effort from the Bucs last night, and with so many questions revolving around Giannis, just gross in Brooklyn. Brewers swing a trade over the weekend. They traded Isaac Collins and Nick Mears. They bring back a high-leverage lefty reliever from Kansas City. We'll break that down, too. Let's go.
On the ground, a chance here. Durham to Hardy to first. In time! Yes! The Brewers win! Yes!
Here comes Melvin to the 25, to the 20, Gordon 15, 10, 5, touchdown! Wisconsin! Record-breaking run!
Morgan a smash up the middle, base hit to center. Here comes Gomez around third. A throw and the Brewers win!
Here's the snap. He looks, he throws, it's complete interception. And there is your Super Bowl dagger.
Booker the drive, gets inside, leads in, knocked away and stolen by Holiday. Phoenix has to foul on a pinnacle ball, throws it down.
Swinging fly ball in the right center. Broxton is there, and they're the champions. They have done it.
It's been a 50-year journey. Wisconsin, we've got a room at the top of the world tonight. The Milwaukee Bucks are NBA champions.
Yeah, welcome in on a Monday morning, a decidedly not victory, an unvictory Monday. Whatever the opposite, loser Monday, Price is Right, Failhorn Monday. I saw this floating around Packer Twitter from Parks and Rec. I think it's apropos, this 9-second clip.
I'm fine. It's just that life is pointless and nothing matters, and I'm always tired. Also, I can't sleep. I'm overeating. None of my old hobbies interest me.
Other than that, things are going pretty well.
Great opportunity squandered? Absolutely. A crushing blow? Yes. Will I get over it? No. But life goes on. Not for me.
It does. It's a real somber Monday morning for Packer fans. And what is absolutely crazy about what happened over the weekend is that it was going so well. I did see some people compare this. And again, I am somebody who subscribes to the idea that Packer fans in general throw around the 2014 NFC Championship game way too much. They compare it to things that aren't even close to being in that realm. They throw it around all nimbly-bimbly like a cat jumping from tree to tree. I saw that comparison yesterday. I guess in a regular season sense, just given that you had the lead, you blow that, and then you add on the devastating injuries. That 2014 NFC Championship game was just a blown game. There weren't injuries on top of it that caused it, so there are a lot of differences. But I can kind of see where, when I think back to the 2014 NFC Championship game, and how it happened and the result and what I did after the result. And after the game, I just stared off into space for like an hour, catatonically unable to wrap my mind around how they lost that game. And yesterday was kind of similar in that regard. I did see people throwing that comparison around. Again, I know we've said this. They were in the Super Bowl. This is week 15, where you're the 2 seed in the NFC, and there's still so much to be decided. They were in the Super Bowl when Morgan Burnett slid down. They had a chance to be one win away from a title. The stakes just don't match up to me. But I guess I can see when you combine having a 9-point lead on the road and letting that escape the way they did, and then you tack on devastating injuries on top of it, and maybe the most, outside of Jordan Love, the most devastating injury this team could sustain on a team that looked like it might be ready to make a deep run. I guess I can see that bleed into the 2014 NFC title game comparison a little bit. But again, I reiterate, they were in the Super Bowl in 2015. I thought that was maybe a tad dramatic. I think that was maybe getting away from the narrative a little bit. But it was truly astonishing how this whole thing played out. So, like we talked about on Friday, you go into this game, you've got the number 2 seed in the NFC, the Packers, the number 1 seed in Denver with the Broncos. They've won 10 in a row. They haven't lost at home. Packers seem to be gelling at the right time, coming in 9-3-1, ripping off 4 wins in a row on their own. And the first half was wildly entertaining. Packers force a turnover early. We can talk about some of the minutia of the game if you want to. You felt like after that Edgerrin Cooper forced fumble, they get a field goal, but would have been nice to turn that into a touchdown. 3-0 Packer lead. 6-0 Packer lead after they go on that long drive. They took over at their own 3-yard line and were knocking on the door of the end zone. Then a couple of penalties once they got in the red zone. And they end up kicking a 26-yard chip shot field goal. You felt like they left some meat on the bone there where you could have had a 14-0 lead and maybe put this game away early, and instead you have a 6-0 lead. Now that is, if I recall correctly, that is somewhat similar to the 2014 NFC title game. Isn't that how that played out too? Didn't the Packers go on 2 nice drives to begin that game? Maybe had a turnover in there, but only got field goals on both of those drives, and you kind of felt like, oh, should have gotten more there. So I guess there is that metaphor that works. But you had some red zone difficulties yesterday. We can talk about all of that. But you had the 6-0 lead, then the Broncos get in front, then Jordan Love finds Josh Jacobs an absolute dime. What a throw and what a catch by Jacobs in the corner of the end zone. Josh Jacobs had a sensational day, given that he's probably operating right now? It's 65 or 70% with the knee injury. That put the Packers up 13-7. The Broncos respond. They're up by 1. And the Packers get down the field for that McManus 35-yard field goal. 2-point halftime lead. But you felt really good at halftime, even though you felt like, all right, we maybe should have had a bigger lead. Maybe you could have turned one of those field goals into a touchdown. And instead of being up 2, you're up 6 then. But overall, 2 of the top teams in the NFL in a 2-point game at halftime. Well, what's not to like? Packers get the ball to begin the second half. They've had issues with that. We talked about that coming out of the Bear game, right? On Tuesday this past week, where they had a lead, had a chance to really get out in front, but went 3 and out on their first drive the second half. That doesn't happen yesterday. Josh Jacobs, again, 40-yard touchdown run. One of the best runs I think he's had all year. You're up by 9. Then the Packer defense forces a 3 and out. So you are up 23-14. 9-point lead on the road, and your defense gets a stop. You get the ball back, and here's a chance to get up by 12, to get up by, what would it have been, 16 points. You score a touchdown on that drive. You get up 30-14. There's a lot of time left, I'll grant you that, but I feel like that game's kind of over, even though the Broncos have been good in the fourth quarter and all the things we talked about on Friday. If you score a touchdown on that drive, it is 30-14, and in all likelihood, that game is a wrap. And what happens? The whole thing changes on one play. The first play of that drive, they try the deep shot to Christian Watson, and there is going to be debate among Packer fans about whether or not that was the time to do that. You had a 2-possession lead. Could you have just dinked and dunked, which you were having success with yesterday? Could you have just kept the short game going, chew up some clock, move the ball, maybe you get a field goal, maybe you get a touchdown, whatever, but just play a little more conservatively. But it is interesting. And I know every game is different and every game feel is different, but one of the criticisms that we had of Matt LaFleur at the beginning of the year that a lot of people have had is that he has not been aggressive. Remember, we had that huge conversation coming out of the Panther loss and the Eagles loss of what happened to all gas, no brakes LaFleur? What happened to scared money, don't make money LaFleur? Well, in that moment, he got very aggressive and they went for the kill shot on a deep ball to Christian Watson, which is what we've been begging him to do. I don't know that we can be critical for weeks and weeks and weeks of Matt LaFleur not being aggressive and the offense not going for the throat. And then when they do and turn the ball over and it flips the game, can we also be mad about that? I guess we can. We're fans. We can do whatever the hell we want. We can criticize on both sides of our mouths. That's the nature of podcasting. One side of my mouth, I can criticize Matt LaFleur. The other side of my mouth, I can criticize Matt LaFleur for doing the opposite of what I just criticized him for. But they go for the kill shot, and I know the ball was underthrown a touch, and it has been talking point in the Jordan Love era, which we are now almost done with year 3. And we can go through this when we go through the box score. Of course, given what we saw in the second half with the interception we're about to talk about and the pick also on the pass that Dontavian Wicks, it was behind him, but it hit him in the hands. He couldn't hang on to that one. So the fact that you lose this game where you had it under control, it felt like, and 2 Love picks, 2 turnovers are a big part of that. Of course, the people we talk about often on this podcast, the non-Jordan Love believers, were throwing a party, were throwing a parade because Jordan Love looked bad in a loss, and I had people chirping me on Facebook already about, oh, this, you say this is the guy, and they're going to cherry pick that game on the road against the number 1 seed. I promise you, we don't have to do this every game, and I know I'm guilty of it when he has good games of saying it on the podcast. Oh, he is the guy, so I'm sort of guilty of this as well. But every time Jordan Love has a bad game or a couple of bad throws, I promise you we don't need to every time litigate whether or not he is the franchise quarterback. Franchise players have bad games. And I know we've been over this when we compare it to Brett Favre. And at this point, I think Jordan Love is very much more on the Brett Favre side. If you're going to compare him to one of the prior quarterbacks, he is much more on the Favre side than he is on the Rodgers side, because Rodgers was so precise. He avoided mistakes like they were the plague. Love does take a few more chances like Favre did. But we don't have to do this every time. Love had 1 touchdown, 2 picks yesterday. What was interesting about Love's game is he had 127 quarterback rating at halftime, completing 80% of his passes, had the touchdown to Jacobs, looked like he was just rolling all over that Denver defense. And then it totally flipped in the second half. A 1 touchdown, 2 pick game. I think his quarterback rating was 70. But every time he has a bad game, he has 9 games this year with a quarterback rating of 100 or better. But every time he has a bad game, that group of people are going to start throwing a party because it backs up their belief that Love is not the guy. We don't have to do that. Good, great players have bad games all of the time. I'm old enough to remember Brett Favre throwing 6 interceptions in a divisional round game. 6. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5. 6 interceptions. If this team makes the playoffs, if this Packer team makes the playoffs, and I still think they are, and we can end on some positivity in a few minutes here, in 25 minutes. But if Jordan Love and this Packer team get to a wild card game, and Jordan Love threw 6 interceptions in a playoff game the way Brett Favre once did, and there were multiple playoff games where he threw multiple picks in games. And I love Favre, and he's an all-time great, and he's a huge part of my childhood and growing to love this franchise. But if Jordan Love threw 6 interceptions in a wild card game in a month, Packer Twitter would burn to the ground. No one would be able to handle it. It's fascinating to me. But you throw that ball, I don't think it was that bad of a ball. He does have an issue, and I will be critical of Jordan Love, even though I think he's the guy. He has an issue with deep balls, sometimes underthrowing them. If you watch the replay of that ball to Christian Watson, I mean, maybe it's a tick underthrown. The bigger takeaway I have from that replay is the reigning defensive player of the year, Patrick Surtain. You know, he won the award last year for the best defensive player in the NFL. He made one hell of a play. And Christian Watson also could have high-pointed that ball. There's a lot of blame to go around. Was it a touch underthrown? Yes. But Patrick Surtain, who is one of the best defenders in the NFL, the reigning deep boy, He made a heck of a play, stretching out to get that interception and hang on. But then the bigger thing there was not just the turnover, which was a gut punch. Then the camera pans out, and Christian Watson is down, and he's grabbing at his chest. And we know with Christian Watson, a narrative for his career so far has been dropped, and it feels like he's getting that rectified. But it's injuries. He has a hammy pop up. Then he went to Madison, worked on that. Then it felt like the hammies were good. Then the ACL tears. Then he comes back from that. Now maybe it's a shoulder or a chest thing. It's one thing after the other. It's not quite to the Marshawn Lloyd level yet, but because he has played in a bunch of regular season games. But that is a big part of his career arc right now. And given how well he was playing, and we just discussed this a podcast or two ago where it felt like he was not dropping the ball anymore. He's coming up with multiple touchdown games. It feels like he is finally in year 4 morphing into a legit 1A or 1B kind of guy. And then for that, it just sucked the life out of me. Not just the turnover, but then he's down, and then that's in question. Broncos get down, score the touchdown on the Cortland Sutton pass from Bo Nix. Cortland Sutton eviscerated Keyshawn Nixon yesterday. Torched him. Just toast, left and right. That made it 23-21, but the game's not over. Okay, it's back to being a game. You're up by 2, you get the ball back. Let's go down the field, let's score some points and see if we can stabilize here. Packers can't do that offensively. It looks a lot different when Watson's not out there. And then they give the ball back to Denver. Then late third quarter, as the Broncos are driving for the go-ahead touchdown, a completed pass from Bo Nix. I forget who he hit. And then the camera pulls back. And it's Micah Parsons grasping at his knee in obvious pain. And you just feel, I felt it as myself, as a person. I'm alive, as an alive person. I felt it. You could sense it almost through a TV screen from the Packer players, from the sideline. It's like a Dementor from Harry Potter sucked their souls out, sucked the life out of them. Because it was obvious that there was no ambiguity. And I know we haven't gotten the official word yet. And because they play on Saturday, I don't think Matt LaFleur talks to the media today. I don't think he'll talk until tomorrow because everything's on a different schedule because of the shortened week. And maybe you'll get an official report from Shefty or Ian Rappaport. I think we can maybe just try to check that here as we're doing this podcast. Just keep an eye on it. Got to make sure it's from the real Shefty and not the fake Shefty. There are about 8,000 fake Adam Schefter accounts. And you got to make sure it's coming from the real guy. There he is. So let's just see if there's an update right now. But it looks like, without question, this is going to be a torn ACL, barring some Reggie White miracle. Is there a Reggie White healing miracle still in the offing? It looks like a torn ACL. And because there was no ambiguity there, it just felt like this is it. I mean, this game is over, and maybe the season's over. Broncos get in for the go-ahead touchdown, take a 27-23 lead, and the Packers do get down the field, 9-play, 46-yard drive, stalls out again and around the red zone, get a field goal to make it a 1-point game. Broncos score a touchdown to make it 34-26, but then you do end up with 3 straight possessions where the Packers had the ball and, in theory, could tie with a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. The first one ended, first of the 3 drives ends with the pass a little behind Dontavian Wicks, but I think Wicks will tell you, and when you watch the replay, his hands were on it. I mean, it was a little behind him, but make the play, dude. Just make the play. Jordan Love does not turn the ball over a ton, and when he does, it feels like his passes are a little off in one direction or the other, but his receivers could do him a favor, too, and make a play on a bad ball, or make a play on a ball behind them, or make a play on a ball that was a little underthrown, and they just don't seem to do that. So that's off of Wick's hands. That's intercepted. Packer defense gets a stop. Then the Packers have a turnover on downs. Then the Broncos inside the 40, where they probably could have kicked a field goal to go up 37-26. They go for it on 4th and 2. Packers stop them there. And you get the ball back with 1:10 left. No timeouts, but you've only got to go 60 yards. They got the ball at the 40 or 41-yard line. In the modern-day NFL, in the year of our Lord 2025, it's not crazy with no timeouts. 1:10 left to get down the field and score a touchdown. They quickly go 4 and out. Love was under duress the entire time. At that point, the Broncos could really pin their ears back. What did we talk about on Friday? The number one matchup I was concerned about was that Bronco pass rush, the best in the NFL, against a Packer offensive line that has not been consistently great this year. And then once the Broncos got the lead, and you had Zach Tom down, he did not return, but it sounds like he might be okay going forward. So you had a little bit of a makeshift offensive line out there too. But when they have the lead late and the crowd is revved up, you knew on those final couple of drives, they could pin their ears back. They could bring several blitzers, which they did, sped Jordan Love up, didn't have a lot of time, and got sacked in big moments. They got one last sack to end it. Broncos take a knee and get a 34-26 win. But it is just insane to me that you had a 23-14 lead. with 9 minutes left or 10 minutes left and the ball in the third quarter, everything looking hunky-dory, and then one play kind of sends the whole thing spiraling. You turn the ball over, Watson gets hurt, doesn't return. 25 minutes later, Parsons gets hurt, appears to be a season-ending injury. He does not return, and you couldn't get a stop or a score when you really needed it late in a 34-26 loss. Let's talk about the injuries, which we already kind of have, but to me, that's the bigger story because I could live with. If they went on the road, I'd still be pissed off, I think, because, again, I feel like this is another instance of a Matt LaFleur coach team, and he's won a lot of games, but a Matt LaFleur coach team against a good team in a close game, not doing the small stuff to get a win. One of those things to me was, too, I don't even remember when it happened, the fourth quarter where the Packers had 2 timeouts left. Broncos converted a big third down to get them inside the Packer 20-yard line, and they challenge it. And the second you see the replay, it's obviously a catch. There's no gray area there at all. There was no question that was a catch. There was, there's maybe a bobble here, and maybe he didn't quite get that foot down. Did he control through the catch? It was as obvious a catch as could get. And in a one-possession game, you're just going to give away a timeout. You're just going to light a timeout on fire. Little stuff like that. Tons of penalties on special teams, but more penalties on the offensive line and Rasheed Walker. It just does feel like in year 7 of LaFleur, that a lot of that stuff happens when you get to these close games against good teams, and it feels like a theme at this point. I'm not saying Matt LaFleur should be fired, and I know that conversation was big coming out of the back-to-back losses to Carolina and Philadelphia early this year, and I said then I'm not advocating for that, but I think it's worth talking about some of the issues this team has against good teams in close games, in playoff games, in Matt LaFleur's coaching history, and I do think some of that, injuries aside, reared its head again on Sunday in a close game against a really good team on the road. Just little stuff that they don't make the right decision on. Feels like he doesn't have a great feel for the game sometimes. The play calling, challenges, penalties at bad times, stuff like that. But the injuries are obviously the much bigger storyline. So let's break this down one by one. Zach Tom, the guy you just paid more than any offensive lineman has ever been paid to play right tackle, who's been battling the oblique injury. He left the game with a knee injury. He did not return. That changed the alchemy of the offensive line, it felt like, and that even allowed a really good pass rush to get after it even more. Because Zach Tom, it felt like, as we talked about, was getting close to 100%, was getting close to being fully healthy. When he is fully healthy, he's probably, of the guys out there right now, your best offensive lineman when you compare him to Ryan and Belton and Banks and Walker. If he's healthy, he's the best guy on that line, and you lost him. It does sound like that is not going to be a massive injury. Whether or not he would be maybe ready to go by Saturday, I do not know. But it does not sound like that is going to be a long-term injury. There was some good news there. Evan Williams left the game with a knee injury because so much stuff had happened, and the Micah Parsons cloud was hanging over the game and the broadcast and the team. I'm not even sure that was brought up on the CBS broadcast, but Evan Williams went down with a knee injury. He did not return. Does not sound like that is major. We did get some good news on Christian Watson, it felt like, late night last night. If you follow Christian Watson's dad on Twitter, he is an interesting follow. He wears his emotions on his sleeve as a former player and a parent of a star NFL player or rising NFL player. He has a lot of enthusiastic, shall we say, takes on Twitter. He seems to operate under the impression that everybody hates his son for some reason, and every time he does something good, he's telling the haters and the losers to shove it, even though I don't know that anybody really dislikes Christian Watson. He has a lot of criticisms of Matt LaFleur's play calling, which sometimes aren't the worst. Some of his takes aren't bad, but he's got a take on everything. He's one of those guys, one of those sports parents. He has a take and an idea on everything, and he will get into it with anybody, with bots, with guys that, like if I had a Twitter handle of John69041742, he would get into it with me if I was critical of Christian Watson. And I think people they toy with him a little bit because they know they're going to get a reaction out of him. He is an interesting follow on Twitter. However, he did tweet late night last night at about midnight. I guess Watson went to the hospital for observation and then did fly home with the team, which was good news. He did not stay overnight at the hospital, which would have been a much more serious situation. He did tweet at about midnight, and he prefaced it by saying the haters are going to be sick. All the people that hate my son are going to hate to hear this. Nobody hates your son, dude. Nobody. The people you are arguing with are probably not even football fans. They just know that you're going to get your hackles up anytime anybody is critical of your son, which I guess I sort of understand. If you're a parent, you're going to be in that realm where anybody that says anything negative about your kid, you're probably going to fire off. But I don't even know that any of the people in his mentions even care about the Packers. They just know that he is going to get riled up at anything. So he did preface it by saying something like the haters are going to be sick, but number 9 isn't done yet. It kind of sounds like, and reports from Sports Illustrated this morning about a half an hour ago from Bill Huber seem to indicate that not only is it not a long-term injury, he could be back by Saturday in Chicago. That is clearly a huge update this morning because the offense yesterday against a good Denver defense, it was humming when Christian Watson was out there, and it was not humming after he went down at the 10-minute mark of the third quarter. Is it all because of Watson? Probably not. The play calling changed a little bit. The offensive line, obviously without Tom, changes the calculus there. But I think Watson's a big part of it. He's the field stretcher you need. At some point, you feel like Matthew Golden can rise to that role given the ability and the speed that he possesses, but he's not there yet. And Watson is the guy right now. He is your number 1 when he's out there, and the whole dynamic of the offense changed when he went down. So if that is true, and he is going to be good to go by Saturday, that changes a lot about how I feel about the remainder of this season. Now, the biggest one is obviously Micah Parsons, and he was everything they traded for him. He has been everything that you wanted him to be. He is a great locker room presence. He is a fantastic leader. He gives you everything on the field that we read about. I mean, his speed is unbelievable. 12.5 sacks this year. 60 quarterback pressures. He gets held every play. We did get a Micah Parsons holding call on Sunday. We got it early. So we knew we weren't going to get one for the remainder of the game, even though there were 4 or 5 clear ones after that. But that was the first time they actually flagged a hold of Micah Parsons since week whatever. What was it, 4 or 5? Is that what they said? So it had been 10 weeks, even though he gets held 10 times a game. They finally got him one. He finally got a call there. And he's been everything. I mean, everything that you wanted when they made the trade. You give up 2 first-round picks. You pay him $180 million, making the highest-paid non-quarterback in NFL history. He has been everything you would want, both on the field and off the field and in the locker room, and to lose him is arguably the biggest loss you could sustain. I guess the debate would be Jordan Love or Micah Parsons. Who would be the bigger loss there? And some people, like the people who don't like Love, would say that Malik Willis is better anyway, so they'll be actually better, John. That's what the Love haters will say. They'll be better off with Malik Willis in that game. But those are the two to me. I mean, those are, if you made a list of the most irreplaceable players on this Packer team, Love and Parsons are 1A, 1B in some order. And it does feel like we are probably a few hours away from getting the confirmation that he has a torn ACL. Now, we talked about in the teaser, this not only has an impact on this year, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's nobody's fault. But you think of next year, Watson came back after, 9 months after a torn ACL, which was crazy. Micah Parsons is, like Watson, an athletic freak, so maybe he would be capable of a quick turnaround like that, but that puts you still at late October, early November of next year, and now you factor in, you gave up a first-round pick. We don't have a first-round pick this year. Next year, you paid him all that money, so it's not just a season ender. It is at least half the season next year that you're going to be without Parsons. I guess if you want to spin zone it, you could say, all right, well, that means we'll pick him up in Week 10. This happens a lot in the NBA or baseball where you have a guy out for 3 or 4 months and then after the trade deadline. You see that a lot in baseball where if you get an injured player back, a key player back after the deadline, a lot of fan bases, Brewer fans are certainly guilty of this, will say, well, it's almost like you traded for an MVP caliber player. It'll be like that for the Packers after Week 10 next year. It'll be like you got a defensive MVP for nothing. But it does feel like that's going to run itself right into next year as well. So the ramifications are not just this year. How does the defense look now without him? Can you make a run without him? Can you win a division without him? Can you solidify a playoff spot without him? I think that last one you should be able to do. And we're going to take our lap through the NFL here in a second. And the Lions' loss puts you in a decent spot still to at least be talking playoffs. But there are so many questions now without Parsons about what is the forecast for this team. How deep could this team go? Even without Tucker Kraft. I mean, you think of the guys they already lost. Really think about the injuries, or maybe you don't want to. Think about the injuries this year and the guys you're without. Tucker Kraft is out for the year. Elton Jenkins is out for the year. Your most versatile lineman. I know we've discussed how he was not great at center, but he is your most versatile lineman, a former All-Pro, Pro Bowl caliber offensive lineman. He's out for the year. Devontae Wyatt is out for the year. Now Parsons is out for the year. You've spent a large chunk of the season without Christian Watson, just got him back. You spent a large chunk of the season without Jaden Reed, just got him back. Zach Tom, Evan Williams, Christian Watson all go down, and maybe those aren't as serious yesterday, but that is a list of players. If you were to give me, before the year began, if you were to give me or tell me to, hey, John, make a list of the 10 most irreplaceable players the Packers have, like who could they least lose in a season where you're hoping for an NFC Championship game run, a Super Bowl run, maybe a title run, who could you least afford to lose? The guys I just listed are like 8 of the 10 players, and like we just said, Parsons and Love, however you want to order them, are 1A, 1B on a list of guys that you just can't succeed this year without, and now you lost one of those guys. But I think Tucker Kraft is certainly a top 5 guy, top 4 guy that you could ill afford to lose. Jenkins is probably on that list. Watson's certainly on that list, and you just got him back. Reed's probably on that list, and you just got him back, but he missed 75% of the year. So it's just unfortunate. It feels like this year, if you're fully healthy, and you're never fully healthy, I get that, but if you're reasonably healthy, it feels like you have the horses this year to do what we talked about before the year began. Win 12 games, win 13 games, win the division, be in a position where you could maybe be a 1 seed and all roads go through Lambeau, make a title run. But the unfortunate fact at this point is you are losing and missing a significant amount of key players. And Micah Parsons is the keyest of all of the key players that you lose yesterday in what looks like a season-ending injury. It is hard to fathom that amount of key players going down, and we're not even to week 16 yet. So that's the biggest one coming out of yesterday, and I guess we await maybe a miracle today that would, maybe it would be just be a sprained MCL and he'd be back in the playoffs or something, but it doesn't feel like that is news that's likely to drop today. It's just unreal, the amount of significant pieces that have gone down and are now down for the entirety of the regular season. Now, in terms of the game itself, 2 things, if we weren't so focused on the injuries that I would pick apart, we talked about one of them, red zone offense. They had issues with that early in the year. They had issues with it yesterday. 5 trips in the red zone, 1 touchdown in the red zone. That's not going to get it done on the road against the number 1 team in the AFC. And then the other one that I found surprising, even before Micah Parsons went down, Jeff Hafley's defense, which going into Sunday was the 5th-ranked overall defense and 6th-ranked defense in the NFL in terms of points given up per game, got absolutely obliterated by Sean Payton. Like I said in the teaser, Sean Payton and Bo Nix ate Jeff Hafley's lunch yesterday. They were able to put some pressure on Bo Nix when Micah was out there. When he left the game, how slow did the defensive front 7 look without Micah Parsons? I know we discussed it as we talked about Micah Parsons a few weeks ago and how having a player like that is such a joy because he has such elite speed and strength. It just changes the way you watch the game, the way you watch the defense. Well, when he's not out there, it's like going from high def to standard def viewing. It looked like the Packers were playing at half speed, and those guys were busting their asses trying to make something happen, but that's how elite Micah Parsons is as an athlete, that when he's not on the field watching Van Ness and Rashawn Gary try to put pressure on Bo Nix, it's like they couldn't do anything. And it looked like they were moving at a snail's pace, even though that's not the case. That's just how good and quick Micah Parsons is. But Nix had a lot of time, and Bo Nix just carved up that secondary. We have talked ad nauseum this year about how the secondary is the weakness for this Packer team. Nobody has taken advantage of it quite to the level that Denver did yesterday. Bo Nix has only had, in comparison to Jordan Love has had 9 games this year where he's had a quarterback rating of 100 or better. Bo Nix going into yesterday, while he's been solid, has had 2 games of a QB rating of 100 or better. Bo Nix went 23 of 34, 302, 4 touchdowns, no picks, quarterback rating of 134.7, quarterback QBR of 88. Easily the best individual game of his career as he is in year 2. And he got just enough time, and that Packers secondary did not hold up. We talked about Keyshawn Nixon, I think, coming out of the Chicago game, right, because he had the big pick at the end of that game. And we discussed it, I think, on the Tuesday podcast, about how Nixon is a polarizing figure where it feels like every big play he makes a couple of knucklehead plays, and then he gets a personal foul penalty or something stupid like that. He got destroyed yesterday by everybody. I mean, anybody he was matched up on, primarily on Cortland Sutton, but any matchup he had, he could not carry their jock. Cortland Sutton, 7 for 113, 1 touchdown, wide open all day. Troy Franklin had 6 for 85, 1 touchdown. Little Jordan Humphrey, which I guess is his actual name. I kind of thought Jim Nantz was saying that he was little, and I thought, ooh, he's not going to like that, but that's actually his name, Little Jordan Humphrey. 3 for 42 and 1 touchdown. By the way, he's 6'4". 3 for 42 on a touchdown. Anybody that was on either Valentine or Nixon was getting whatever they wanted yesterday. And yes, a part of that was you didn't generate the pressure you normally do on Bo Nix. And as we went over at the beginning of the year, the reason you get a guy like Parsons is to put the pressure on a quarterback more consistently, to cover up some deficiencies you have in the secondary. And we saw yesterday, if you don't get pressure consistently, especially when Parsons is down, that secondary with Valentine and Nate Hobbs, who is back, but nobody talked about that because he had a bad game. That secondary of Hobbs, Valentine, and Keyshawn Nixon against a good team with weapons is just not going to get it done if you give that quarterback a bunch of time in the pocket, which is what happened yesterday. So if you want to break down the box score, Jordan Love, 24 of 40, 276, a touchdown, 2 picks, not good. Quarterback rating of 68, QBR of 77. Look, I've said, I believe Jordan Love is the guy. I will not hesitate to say when he had a bad game. Good, great players have bad games all of the time. You just hope it's fewer and far between over a 17-game schedule. He had a bad one yesterday, and it wasn't even a bad game. It was a bad half. Like we talked about, his quarterback rating at halftime was 127, and it looked like it was going to be a Love-Nix duel the entire game, and that just kind of kept on going for Bo Nix, but did not for Jordan Love. The prior 2 games, Love had a quarterback rating of 124 on the road against Detroit, had a quarterback rating of 121 at home against the first-place Bears. He's been way more good than bad, but yesterday was not a good game. A touch underthrown on the Watson pick, which kind of felt like it flipped the game's momentum, and a little behind on Dontavian Wicks. That led to his second pick. First multi-pick game of the year, right? I don't think he's had another multi-pick game. Yeah, that's it. So Love comes out of yesterday. The season totals are 23 touchdowns, 6 picks, quarterback rating of 102, and a QBR of 74. Those are both career highs, even with the bad game yesterday. I will concede this. Remember we talked at the end of the podcast on Friday that if the Packers win this game and Love plays well, just prepare yourselves for the Super Bowl narratives and the Love MVP narratives to spin out of control. None of that happens coming out of yesterday. So Love, I think, is still top 5 in terms of betting odds for the MVP. He was number 3 like we discussed on Friday. But that's not going to see any elevation after yesterday. If he could have continued what he was doing in the first half, that's what we were looking at. And that's why I was getting so excited at halftime. It kind of looked like everything we talked about was going to happen. You were going to get a win. Love was going to throw 2 or 3 touchdowns, no picks. We're going to be talking about Super Bowl odds on Monday and Love MVP odds. And then it all came crumbling down around us. But he still has really good overall numbers on the year. But I understand, if you don't like Jordan Love, you are going to use yesterday as Exhibit A as to why you don't think he's the guy. And that's fine. If that's how you feel, that's how you feel. Josh Jacobs was tremendous yesterday, playing at probably 3/4 speed, 12 carries, 73 yards, 6.1 yards a carry, and a touchdown. The running game overall was really effective. 20 carries, 115 yards, 5.8 a carry in that touchdown. Receiving-wise, Matthew Golden, probably his best game in many weeks, had to fill in once you had Reed go down a little bit. He was back and then gone at the end of the game. Obviously, Watson going down. 3 for 55, still not going to touch the 700 yards that we need him to touch for the futures bet. How many does he have now? 341. Well, you know what I could use? You know what I could use? And we had a lot of good things go our way for futures bets, which we're going to go over here in a minute. We do have the over on Matthew Golden's 700 receiving yards. Coming out of yesterday, he's got 27 catches for 341. They have 3 games remaining. So if he got 100 yards in every game, which he hasn't even had it in one game this year, that would put him at about 650. I could really use Matthew Golden to go out in Chicago and give me like 6 catches for 130 and a touchdown and just give me a puncher's chance of, maybe in the last 2 weeks. But yeah, he's not close to, he's not even halfway there. Jaden Reed at 5 for 55, had a couple of drops late as well. Luke Musgrave, pretty good, 4 for 52. Romeo Doubs, 2 for 36. Watson, 3 for 29 before he went down. Jacobs, 2 for 19 in that incredible touchdown reception. John Fitzpatrick, not bad either, 3 catches for 18 yards. Brooks had 1 for 6, and Wicks had 1 for 6. Been interesting that Wicks has just completely disappeared. I'm still holding my stock. I'm not selling my stock. But he has totally disappeared after that breakout performance in Detroit on Thanksgiving Day. I don't even think he had a catch against Chicago, 1 catch, 6 yards, and then the kind of drop. Did they count him with a drop there? I don't think they did. But the one that he couldn't hang on to that results in a pick. Otherwise, did force one turnover. The Edgerrin Cooper forced fumble on the opening Bronco drive. Packers did not generate a sack yesterday. First time in a long time they were unable to do that. Kicking game, McManus was not McGanus. He was really good back in Denver. 4 for 4 on field goals, 2 for 2, made all 6 of his kicks. Packers special teams had several big penalties and bad decisions in terms of kickoffs, so Rich Bisaccia remains undefeated as the all-time worst, highest-paid coordinator coach in the league, highest-paid special teams coach in the league, as the Packers fall to 9-4-1 with the loss yesterday. Now, let's talk about the playoff picture. Much like how the Bears fell hard after they lost at Lambeau Field last week, they were the 1 seed, then they fell all the way to the 7 seed. Packers were the 2 seed. They fall all the way to the 7 seed yesterday, the final spot that would get it in the playoffs. We'll talk about the playoff picture in a second. But now the Packers are sitting at 9-4-1, and you've got a short week where you don't know a lot about Zach Tom Watson right now. Or who else was it that we were discussing? Tom Watson. There were so many injuries yesterday. Oh, Evan Williams. We don't know. We have some encouraging reports on those 3 guys, and you would love to have all 3 of those guys out there in Chicago. But you've got coming up now on a short week at Chicago. Bears won. We'll talk about that in a second. Not a lot to go over. They beat the Browns 31-30. There, we talked about it. That gets them to 10-4. So you're right back where you were when the Packers hosted the Bears 2 weeks ago. The Packers are a half game behind Chicago for the NFC North lead. This feels like the division title is on the line, right, this weekend. If you win, you'll sneak back in front by first place, and you have a good chance to win the division. If you lose this game, you're a game and a half back with only 2 games left, and it feels very unlikely that you will win the division. But this is, I think, for all of the NFC North marbles coming up on Saturday at Chicago, 7:20 kickoff. Injury reports this week will be huge. I assume we're going to get the confirmation that Micah Parsons is done. Packers open as 2-point favorites. So even with what seems to be a season-ending injury for Parsons and ambiguity around Evan Williams, Zach Tom, and Watson, Vegas still views the Packers as a favorite in this game, a 2-point favorite, 7:20 kickoff on Saturday night at Soldier Field. Now let's take our lap around the NFL. It was a dark day injury-wise in the NFL. Bears did get their win. They get 10-4. Ravens shut down the Bengals 24-0. What is going on with Joe Burrow? Joe Burrow looked really sad. I mean, depressed it seems. And he keeps on hinting that there's other stuff going on in his life right now. I hope everything gets better with him. A really sad press conference heading into the weekend, and then just didn't look into it at any point yesterday. And then in the postgame, they asked him about his performance, and he said, there isn't a team in the NFL that would have won with me as their quarterback today. I don't know what the heck's going on there, but hopefully he finds some happiness or finds some help or whatever he needs. He looks depressed right now. Ravens win 24-0. They keep their AFC North hopes alive. Now the Chargers beat the Chiefs. That eliminates the Chiefs from playoff contention, and Patrick Mahomes goes down with a torn ACL. Just a nasty-looking injury. His was on contact. Parsons was not. But Mahomes is done, and you would think done for a good chunk of next year as well. Is the dynasty done in Kansas City? They still have a lot of talent there. I don't know what Kelsey's going to do now in the offseason. Feels like he's kind of been hinting at retirement for a while. He's about to be married to the biggest pop star on the planet. Maybe there are other things he'd rather do than grind through a training camp when you know your star quarterback's not going to be back until probably October or November. The Chiefs are done for the year. 6-8. Chargers get 10-4. One thing I will say about that Bronco win, I know nobody's going to be feeling good for me. Number one, we already hit the over on the 5-unit play we had on the Broncos to get over 9.5 season wins. We have them now as a green check mark with the bet to make the playoffs. They clinched that by beating the Packers yesterday, and the Chargers won, so they stay 2 games back. Broncos have a 2-game lead over the Chargers for the AFC West lead. We have that bet we laid down early in the year on the Broncos to win the division at plus 185, so almost 2-1 coming back. So for that reason, because the Chargers won, for that reason, that Bronco win isn't the worst thing for my gambling life. Now, speaking of the Buffalo Bills, nobody circles the wagon like the Buffalo Bills. They were down 21-0 in New England. Remember we talked about how big that game was. Any hope I have of cashing the Buffalo ticket to win the AFC East hinges on that game. They're down 21-0 before you can blink. I mean, we're, a minute or two into the second quarter, and it's 21-0. I think that's a wrap. Josh Allen rallies the boys, and the Bills win 35-31. So now the Patriots fall to 11-3. The Bills are 10-4, only a game back. New England goes to Baltimore. Sunday night football? Yes, Sunday night football this coming weekend. And the Bills have an easy one. The Patriots, though, after that Baltimore game, have a gimme. So the Bills they are at Cleveland. That's got to be a win. Bills are then home with Philly, and then home with the Jets, the final game of the year. You feel like they're for sure going 2-1. Well, they've got to win out. For any hope that I have to win this bet, they have to win out. So those are the last three. Now, our best bet for the Patriots to lose a game is this weekend, because after this weekend, they've got two cupcakes. The Patriots are at Baltimore, Sunday Night Football this Sunday. Then they're at New York against the Jets and at home against Miami. Now, I guess Miami, if they win tonight, if they beat Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers on the road, they'll be back to 500. So maybe there'll be something to play there for Miami. That's not as much of a cakewalk as maybe we thought it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, but yeah, I think this is this weekend. If Buffalo can beat Cleveland and Baltimore can beat New England and then they're even, I think Buffalo then has the tiebreaker at that point and they'd be back in first place. I just think this weekend is another big weekend for that AFC East bet, but I could not have a big weekend this weekend without the Bills winning that game, and they did. 35-31. Hashtag thank you, Josh Allen. What else happened on Sunday? Commanders over the Giants, no one cared, 29-21. Eagles rout the Raiders. We covered there on -11. They win 31-0. Jaguars all over the Jets, 48-20. Texans beat the Cardinals 40-20. We did not win that under bet. That was way over Cardinals and Texans. And we had the under on 42.5. They scored 60 total points. So the Jaguars are 10-4. The Texans are 9-5, a game back, just like Buffalo. We have the future on the Texans to win the AFC South. That's a better bet, though. That's a +110, not a -300 bet. So they're a game back. The Jaguars go to Denver this weekend. Need another Bronco win. Not only to get them a step closer to winning the AFC West, but to bring the Jaguars down a notch. The Texans have an easy one this weekend in theory. They are at home against the Raiders. Then they go to take on the Chargers, then at home against the Colts to end the year. But we are fully back in that race in the AFC South with another win on Sunday. Now, the Lions lose in Los Angeles. Rams take it 41-34. Devontae Adams left that game with a bad hamstring injury. It looked like just a lot of big names going down on Sunday. But like we talked about on Friday, if the Packers would have won that game in Denver, you would have wanted the Rams to lose because then you're a step closer to the 1 seed. But if the Packers lose in Denver, you want the Lions to lose because you don't want them creeping up on you for a playoff spot. So it actually played out the way you wanted it to in Los Angeles. Lions lose. So right now, the Packers are 9-4-1. That is the last spot in. And right behind them are the Lions at 8-6. 2 worse in the loss column. And the Packers beat them twice this year. Again, with the Packer tie, I don't think tiebreakers are going to come into play at all, but you would have one if you need it because you swept the season series. But that ends up being a big loss for Detroit, and the Packers now with 3 weeks left have a 2 lead in the loss column lead on the spot right behind them that would take a playoff spot away from them. That's why I feel like this weekend the division is on the line in Chicago, but I do feel like the Packers are still in a good spot, even if you lose that game to the Bears, which I never want to see. But if you were to lose that game, I do feel like you're still in a pretty decent spot right now for a playoff spot with a 2-game in the loss column lead over Detroit. Saints beat the Panthers. Nobody wants to win the NFC South. Nobody. Saints win 20-17. They get to 4-10. Panthers fall to 7-7. So they're tied right now with Tampa for the lead in that division. I think they have to play both of their games yet this year. Panthers and Buccaneers. What is the schedule? They've got, so this weekend it is Panthers and Bucks in Carolina, and then the last game of the regular season is Panthers and Bucks in Tampa. They are both 500 now. I still think now with that loss, Baker's going to find a way to get that done, even though it hasn't gone as well as we wanted it to. But nobody wants to win that division. My Niners to win the NFC West division bet, kind of hanging on. They beat the Titans 37-24. They're 10-4. They are a game back of both the Seahawks and the Rams, and the Seahawks and Rams play each other this coming weekend. Seahawks got to win. Phillip Rivers, 44-year-old Phillip Rivers, old man Rivers, made his return to the NFL. An extraordinary story. He is on the Hall of Fame ballot. This has to be the first instance in NFL history where a player who is actively on the Hall of Fame ballot plays in an NFL game. Because once you're gone for 5 years, that gets you on the ballot, and he's probably a borderline Hall of Famer with his stats, and he didn't look too bad. What were his final numbers? Seahawks won 18-16, and Rivers finished 18 of 27, 120 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Not too bad, 44 years old, with a little dad bod, with a little punch to him. Nothing wrong with that. And then the late night last night, Cowboys pretty much see their playoff hopes come to an end. J.J. McCarthy, 2 touchdown, 1 pick. He has had back-to-back really nice games now for Minnesota. They beat Dallas 34-26. So after his horrific performance at Lambeau Field, then the concussion sat him down for a week. Back-to-back games of 120-plus quarterback rating. Remember, the Packers have to end the year at Minnesota. They are 6-8. They're pretty much done in terms of playoff hopes and certainly done in terms of division hopes. But you do wonder, you're on the road in that game 3 or 4 weeks ago with the way McCarthy was looking. I felt really good about that game being a win. But now with the way McCarthy has been playing recently and Parsons down and all the injuries the Packers have, I don't know. So that's a 34-26 win. By the way, we did cash a ticket on Dak Prescott. We had the future on him to throw for better than 3,900 yards. He has already done that. He comes out of last night with 3 games left with 3,931 yards. So some of the futures that we've already hit, the Dak over on yardage, Rams over on season wins, and Broncos over on season wins, and the Broncos to make the playoffs. You know, if I could just limit myself to only doing the future picks, I think we'd be in really good shape. We're going to be in okay shape anyway. We went 1-3 on gambling picks this week, so we're what now? 27, 24-2 or 3. We're just kind of hovering around 500 with the week-to-week picks. But the futures picks are looking really strong, and they almost always are. Just limit yourself to that, John. Just stay with that. A little pep talk for myself. So the Vikings going to win 34-26 in Dallas on Sunday night. Then the Monday nighter is Miami taking on Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. Steelers feel like they have to win this game now, though of course they would need to anyway. But with the Ravens beating the Bengals, now the Ravens are 7-7. Steelers are 7-6 going into tonight. Need a win to stay a game up on Baltimore, who they have the tiebreaker with right now. Well, that is your lap around the NFL here this morning. Let's talk real quickly about the Bucs. A disgusting, pathetic effort in Brooklyn. The Brooklyn Nets, much like the Washington Wizards 2 weeks ago, are actively tanking. They are not trying to win games. The Nets went into last night with a record of 6-18, 2-10 at home. And not only did the Bucs lose, I guess the one thing I can say about the Washington game 2 weeks ago is that at least they lost by 3. It was a close game. Bucs had a lead in the fourth quarter and just blew it. The Bucs were never in the game last night. The Bucs looked like they were taking on the Nets of Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving. The Nets won 127-82. 127-80. A 45-point loss against a team that is not actively trying to win games is beyond disgusting, indefensible. Bucks fall to 11-16. It's losses like that if Giannis eventually does officially say, or we get to a point near the deadline, or after this year is over, however this year concludes, it's games like last night. Like, guys, you are trying to convince a once-in-a-lifetime player to stick around. We are trying to prove to a guy who will never see a guy like that again, in all likelihood, a player of his caliber again. Whenever he leaves, if he ever leaves, whatever. You're probably never going to see a top 25 all-time, top 20 all-time player, top 30 all-time player wear a Bucs jersey again. And maybe we'll get lucky, but it's unlikely. You are trying to convince this guy that we have the parts, when you come back from injury, that we have the tools to be a competitive team and you should stay here, and you lose to a 6-win team by 45 goddamn points. I mean, just horrific. I was texting a buddy of mine. I think Doc is done, right? I mean, the Doc Rivers experiment is over. It really has never worked, and I've said many, many times, I mean, I sort of understand the Adrian Griffin firing 2 years ago midseason, even though the Bucs were 30-13 under Adrian Griffin. 30-13 record under Adrian Griffin. And we know the locker room was revolting against him, and they were notching a lot of wins against bad teams, but at least they were wins against bad teams. They lost by 45 points to a bad team last night. At least in the Griffin era, those were wins. I don't think Griffin had any long-term plan in Milwaukee, or the Bucs had no long-term plan with him by about the first or second month into his tenure. But they parachute in Doc Rivers because of the resume, because he's won a title, because he's a top 10 all-time winning coach. And they kind of are mediocre the rest of that year, out in the first round. Last year they win, 46, 47 games, out in the first round. And now this year they're middling at 11-16, tons of injuries. But it just hasn't worked. And like I've said many times, I like Doc as a guy. I love Doc as a radio person who is covering the team because he's so good in pre and post game. And he even said last night, that was one of the worst games I've ever been a part of in my coaching tenure. The effort was terrible. It's on me. He gave the Matt LaFleur hand up. It's on me. And he said all the things you would expect him to say after you lose to a bad team by 45 points on the road. But I don't know what to do at this point, guys. I really don't. I mean, you've got a ton of question marks around Giannis. Are they going to keep Doc? Does Giannis like Doc? Is that why they're hanging on to Doc? Because I understand, just like it didn't really work out when they fired Griffin midseason and brought in Doc, the likelihood of them firing Doc midseason and bringing somebody new in is unlikely. If they fire Doc, Darvin Ham will just take over, and then how much is this really going to look differently? But at least Darvin Ham would be a little younger and maybe have a couple of different ideas. And a guy who was a head coach and had some success with the Lakers when he was there as the head coach, that would be the most likely move. Maybe they just say, maybe they give a polite firing where they just, we're going to move Doc into a front office role for the rest of the year. And then Doc can spin it where this is what I always wanted to do, and now I'll have a voice in player acquisition and have the ear of John Horst when it comes to potential trades or draft picks or whatever. And they can make it look all pretty for a guy who is a top-time, all-time in wins coach. But I don't know how that would work. I don't know how it would make the Bucks any better, but it's time, right? Right, isn't it? I guess the only thing that would be holding them back maybe from moving on from Doc or transitioning him to a different role or whatever would be if Giannis really loves him, and that maybe would be the straw that breaks the camel's back, I guess. If Giannis truly enjoys Doc as a guy, as a coach, and that's what's keeping Doc employed, I guess you keep going and just see if it can get any better. But if Giannis is not married to Doc and there's no chance of hurting Giannis's feelings by firing Doc or moving him to the front office, I think it's time to make that happen because I just don't think it's going to work out. I love him as a guy to cover. I love him as a mentor for young players, a guy who was a standout in college. He played in the NBA, won a title as a coach. I love everything he gives you as a leader and a mentor, but the schemes, the effort level, the defensive effort, I mean, it does not look good. And it's not going to look good without Giannis, but it should look better than it looked last night in a 45-point loss. Now, I do have an email. Hold on, I get the You Got Mail.
You've got mail.
All right. Email from our buddy Terry in Sheboygan said, John, I love Giannis just like you, and I understand you always defending him, but he could end this speculation with a single statement or a live video on Twitter or TikTok and just say he's committed to Milwaukee, or hell, even sign a contract extension to solidify his spot in Milwaukee. ... Just my thoughts. That's Terry in Sheboygan. Don't forget you can email strangebrewpod@AOL.com. Strangebrewpod, all one word, @AOL.com. And I have to say,
you've got mail.
I don't totally disagree with what Terry has to say, and he probably could do that, but he has done that. He has done that. There has been speculation around Giannis leaving for almost a decade, and he has said time and time again that he's committed to Milwaukee, he wants to win in Milwaukee. I mean, how many times can he be expected to say it? You know what I mean? I get it. I mean, I understand what Terry is saying. And yes, if Giannis just went out on Twitter, Giannis could open his phone right now with his gigantic hands, and he could click Instagram Live right now or Twitter Live or whatever, and he could do a 10-second video where all he says is, I want to play for the Bucks. I am staying in Milwaukee. I don't want to play anywhere else. And yeah, he could sign a contract extension. I don't know if he's available or that's something that he could do yet. I think at the end of this year, when he has 1 year left on his deal, he would be eligible for another Supermax deal of like $300 million. I don't know if that's something logistically they could do right now. So I don't know that he could sign a contract extension at the moment. But yes, Terry is right. He could open his phone up, go Instagram Live. I love Milwaukee. I want to be with the Bucks. I don't want to go anywhere else. End video, and that's the end of it. But I feel like he has done stuff like that time and time and time again. And I think what Giannis has said in the past when this has been brought up, why don't you say something? Why don't you just say something and end the speculation? Giannis has said, it doesn't matter what I say because I can say I want to be in Milwaukee and then it'll die down for 2 or 3 weeks and then another random report will come out from Shams or Windy or somebody like that where they're going to say the exact same thing, and then he's going to be expected to say it again. It would be like on a much lower level. Okay, let's use this scenario. Let's say, I'll use myself. Let's say somebody said, boy, did you hear John Hensler punched a middle school kid on the playground the other day? I said, what? The guy on the B93 morning show? Did the kid deserve it? The kid must have done something to deserve it. Let's say somebody started that rumor. John John Hensler went to Urban Middle School and punched a kid during recess and walked away. And I could hear that story, I could hear that rumor, and I could say, that's patently ridiculous. I would never get in a fight with somebody that could kick my ass, which an 8th grader might be able to, I don't know. They make middle school kids are a lot bigger than they used to be. And I am merely a podcaster, but I'm just a podcaster. I would never do that. I don't even want to waste my breath addressing something that is so patently absurd. But then as that rumor keeps going and I don't address it, then maybe somebody starts to ask my mom about it, or somebody asks my friends about it, or somebody asks our market manager at the station about it. And eventually, they're all going to come to me and say, you've got to say something about it. I know it's insane to say you didn't punch a kid in the face, but you have to say something about it. I say, okay, all right. I did not punch a kid in the face at Urban Middle School, okay? Okay? There's no evidence. It didn't happen. Done and done. And then that would maybe calm things down for a little bit. And then 2 months later, boy, I think John broke into a car last night and stole somebody's radio or whatever, hijacked a car. And I'd hear that again. I'm not going to do this again. I just had to do it. It's as crazy as the middle school story. But then, you know how things work. Eventually it gains steam, and then, you got to say something. Okay, fine. I didn't do that either. But then imagine that keeps happening 7, 8 times in a row. I don't know what the crimes would be at some point, but I think Giannis is at the point where he has tried to quiet this down so many times that he knows no matter what he says, somebody's going to say something to the opposite. So yes, Terry is right. He could do that again in his first interview when he comes back from injury. He could talk to the media and tell them that I'm staying here. I want to be here. This is the only place I want to be. And that will quiet things down for a little bit. But then if they lose 4 out of 5 when he comes back, or something else happens, that rumor's going to pop up again, and he's going to have to play whack-a-mole again. My feeling is that Giannis, at this juncture, with how many times he's had to refute this speculation, I just feel like he knows it's not going to be effective. It's not going to put an end to any of the rumors ever, no matter how many times he has to say something in contrast to something that he feels like is a patently false rumor. So I do somewhat agree with Terry there, but I don't think that would quiet things down. It would quiet it down for a little bit of time, but not for the length of time Giannis would want, which is to never hear it again. So, yeah, ugly loss. Bucks are 11-16. Another long run off here. They have off until Thursday. And they take on the Raptors. Pretty good team on Thursday at Fiserv Forum. Raptors right now are the 5 seed at 15-11. Bucks are still clinging to that 10 spot. Bulls are a game back. Or I guess they're tied, but the Bucks have the lead in the win column and the head-to-head right there. So the Bucks right now would be the last team in the play-in tournament. That's probably not going to entice Giannis to stay. He's going to go punch a middle school kid. He's going to do it. But you know what I mean? I mean, I know that metaphor doesn't totally work. We kind of came up with it on the fly there, but it's just an instance of people start rumors about you, you have to put them to bed. Then another rumor starts, you got to put that one to bed. And another rumor starts, you got to put that one to bed. Then another rumor starts, you got to put that. At some point, you get tired of denying obviously false stories when you do it 7, 8, 9, 10 times. I believe that's where we're at with Giannis. And I believe that's why he's probably not going to do what Terry wants him to do. What we all kind of want him to do is to make us feel comfortable again and say that he wants to be here, that he loves us, that he's never going to leave us. I don't know if that's going to happen because he's done it so many times, and it doesn't matter. So the Bucks have off until Thursday. Raptors at Fiserv Forum Thursday night as they just try to do what they can to win games while Giannis is down. Giannis went down, what game was it? At home against Detroit on the 3rd. So we're not even 2 weeks into this, and he's going to be down probably for 3 or 4 weeks. At best, maybe he's back in the middle of the upcoming road trip right before Christmas, like maybe Tuesday, December 23rd against Indiana. So that means at least 2 or 3 more games without him. Just trying to do what you can to win any amount of games. Losing by 45 in Brooklyn, not a great effort there. All right, let's wrap up on the Brewers, shall we? The trade over the weekend, the Brewers send Isaac Collins to the Kansas City Royals, a guy who finished 4th in Rookie of the Year balloting this year, and I think a player we all really grew to enjoy during the course of the year, a guy I had a future on to win Rookie of the Year, then he fell apart in the month of September and August. But they trade Isaac Collins and Nick Mears. They trade him to Kansas City. In return, they get Angel Zerpa. Zerpa is a high-leverage lefty reliever. He went 5-2 with the Royals last year, had a 4.1 ERA. Of course, just like with Quinn Priester, remember? Just like with some of the other trades Matt Arnold has made, a lot of Brewer fans took to Twitter and said, oh my God, this is such a bad trade, and you gave up this great outfielder in Collins, who was a Rookie of the Year candidate, and Nick Mears has been a late-inning relief option for the last 2 years, and you get him for who the hell is Angel Zerpa? And I have to ask, how many times do we have to do this before you implicitly trust what the Brewer front office is doing, especially as it relates to pitching and the pitching lab and what they've been able to do with guys who do not have great career numbers when they come to the Brewers and then end up being big key pieces on division title winning teams and playoff rosters? What do they have to do to make you believe, to make you believe in these trades? I do understand that people are going to be sad to see Isaac Collins go. He's a great story, 27-year-old rookie, a guy that had grinded and grinded and grinded in the minor leagues and finally got his big opportunity this year. He won the Rookie of the Month award, I think, in August. I will say this about Isaac Collins. As somebody that did have him on a future to win Rookie of the Year after that big month of August he had, when you look at the game log and you look at the month by month for Isaac Collins, he had a really good July, and a pretty good July, a really good August, and that was the month where he hit that walk-off home run against the Mets. That was a part of the Webb winning streak, that 14-game winning streak. That was one of the more dramatic moments. I think that was the game where they rallied from like 6-0 down to win it on a walk-off. That was the day, I think, that was the Sunday of the big flood in Milwaukee, too, where they had cars that were underwater on Brewer Boulevard as they were playing a game. So he had a signature moment in a big win streak. Great month of July, superb month of August. After that, not very good. He hit 120 in the month of September. He went 0-for-9 in the playoffs against the Cubs, and I don't even think he got an at-bat. Maybe one at-bat he got against the Dodgers in the NLCS. I would simply say this. I wish Isaac Collins nothing but the best. I hope he has a great season this upcoming season in Kansas City. I think this was a numbers game. Garrett Mitchell is coming back at some point. Now, whether or not he can stay on the field is a big question. That has not been something he's been able to do in his career. But you've got Garrett Mitchell, you've got Sal Frelick, you've got Jackson Chourio, you've got Christian Yelich, you've got Blake Perkins, who, while he's maybe not as good of an offensive player as Isaac Collins, he is a much better defender than Isaac Collins, who is not a natural outfielder to begin with. He did take to it, but he is a natural infielder. They moved him to the outfield just to get his bat in the lineup when he was hot. But you've got all of these options in the outfield. Collins was expendable to some extent. He's probably the 5th or 6th outfielder on next year's team. I just don't see a spot where he was going to play. And I would also say this, again, wishing Isaac Collins nothing but the best and nothing but future success, because I think he's a really likable guy and I love his storyline. There's a chance that a 27-year-old rookie is a rookie for a reason. There's a reason he was in the minor leagues for a long time and didn't get called up. And there's a chance the Brewers and our fan base and that coaching staff saw the best that Isaac Collins is going to have to offer in a 2-month sample size, and that might be as good as it gets. And he may never recapture that. I hope he does. I hope he sees a lot of success in Kansas City as long as it's not at the expense of the Brewers. But there is a pretty good chance that we saw a really magical 50, 60-day run from Isaac Collins, and he may never be that good again. And what the Brewers decided to do was, we have a ton of outfielders. We have this guy that we're going to sell high on, where he finished top 5 Rookie of the Year balloting. And Nick Mears, too, he tailed off at the end of the year, had a solid year last year. He was solid this year, but not toward the end of the year. A little bit of injury situation there, too. So I think they viewed both of those guys as regression candidates, that Isaac Collins probably was not going to recapture the month of July and August, and Nick Mears is probably not going to be a sub-3 ERA guy again. And they get what they view as a leverage lefty arm out of the bullpen, who apparently they may also think could be a starter. That was something discussed on Adam McCalvy's Twitter yesterday. But he is 26 years old. He has a plus slider. He has a plus sinker, which the Brewers love. That combo of pitches they love. And he's a guy who has 3 years of team control left. Nick Mears did not have any. And Isaac Collins, I think, only had, I don't even think Isaac Collins had an option left. So Zerpa has 3 years of team control, and he has a minor league option. If you would need to send him down for whatever reason to clear up a roster spot, you could do that. The Brewers, as we know, love guys with good sliders and good sinkers and versatility as it relates to their contract, and that's precisely what Angel Zerpa represents. and he could be a leverage lefty out of the pen. But like I said, there has been some discussion already about whether or not they could transition him to a starting role, or maybe Ashby goes back to starting and Zerpa stays in the bullpen. But like I said off the top of the conversation, I don't know what Matt Arnold and the Brewers scouts and the pitching lab have to do to convince some Brewer fans that no matter what pitcher they acquire, no matter what his numbers are, whether or not you've ever heard of him before, does not matter. Remember, Quinn Priester came over with a 6 career ERA and a 3-9 record, and they gave up a top 15 prospect for him. And Brewer Twitter, I can't believe they gave up a 20-year-old prospect for a guy with a 6 ERA. And what did Quinn Priester do? Went out there and won, 13 games, had an undefeated streak of nearly 2 months. Yeah, he scuffled in the playoffs his first time around, whatever. He is going to be a key part of the rotation for the next 3 or 4 years. And they've done this many times with different guys. Just trust the Brewer front office and trust especially the scouting as it relates to pitching, and trust what the pitching lab in Arizona can do with some of these guys. And Zerpa's numbers aren't even that bad when you compare them to Priester's or other rehab projects they brought in. Imagine what they can do with a guy who's actually been pretty good anyway. But they give up Isaac Collins and Nick Mears and bring back Angel Zerpa in a trade over the weekend. All right, that'll do it for us here on your Monday morning. An unvictory, disvictory Monday morning. We will get back after it on Friday. We will get set for Packers-Bears. Somehow we'll try to recalibrate and forget about the injuries and forget about the Micah Parsons cloud over us right now and get set for a massive showdown in Chicago Saturday night, knocking on the door of Christmas week, where the division is in all likelihood on the line at Soldier Field Saturday night. We'll load it up for that. We'll talk a little college football playoffs on Friday. Bucs will have played one game in between now and then. We'll recap that on Friday morning as well. Have a happy, safe work week. We'll chat with you then.